Okay. I won't object.
Tom's early. City of Riverbank Local Redevelopment Authority meetings are now in session. Today is Tuesday, June 11th, 2019. Please rise. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Roll call, please.
Council Authority Member District 1, Luis Uribe.
Here.
Council Authority Member District 2, Cindy Fossey. Here. Council Authority Member District 3, Cal Campbell.
Here.
Vice Mayor Chair Darlene Barber Martinez.
Here.
Mayor Chair Richard D. O'Brien.
Here. There will be no changes to the agenda tonight. Conflict of interest, any council or authority member or staff who has a direct conflict of interest on any scheduled agenda item to be considered is to declare their conflict at this time.
I have a conflict of interest with item 3E2.
I have a conflict of interest with 3E2. When we go to that item, we will skip over that, and I'll pass the baton over to Cal, and he'll be the one in charge. Public comment. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council LRA Board. Individual comments will be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes per person, and each person may speak once during that time. Time cannot be yielded to another person. Under state law, matters presented during the public comment period cannot be discussed or acted upon. For record purposes, state your name and city of residence. Please make your comments directly to the City Council LRA Board. Is there any public comment tonight? Seeing no public comment, we'll continue on to the consent calendar, consistent of item 3A, waive readings. Item 3B, approval of May 14th, 2019, City Council and Local Redevelopment Authority meeting minutes. Item 3C, acceptance of the Community Center remodel project and authorization to file notice of completion. Item 3D, acceptance of the Riverbank Industrial Complex high voltage electrical project and authorization to file a notice of completion. Item 3E, 3 resolutions of the City Council of the City of Riverbank, California for each landscape and lighting district. 2, initiate proceedings for the annual levy of assessment. Declare its intention to levy annual assessments. And 3, for preliminary approval of the annual levy reports for fiscal year 2019-2020. The landscape and lighting districts are named as followed. 3E1, Consolidated Landscaping and Lighting District. Item 3E2, Crossroads Landscaping and Lighting District. Item 3E3, Ridgewood Place Landscaping and Lighting District. Item 3E4, River Cove Landscaping and Lighting District. Item 3E5, Sierra Vista Estate Landscaping and Lighting District. Item 3F, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riverbank, California for each storm drain maintenance district, ordering the levy and collection of assessments for fiscal year 2019-2020. The districts are named as follows. Item 3F1, Riverbank Storm Drain Maintenance District number 2006-01, Heartland. Item 3F2, Riverbank Storm Drain Maintenance District number 05-01, Sterling Ridge. At this point, is there anyone from the public wishing to pull or discuss any of the items? At this time, I'll bring it back to the council for consideration. of all items except item 3E2, Crossroads Landscaping and Lighting District. Do I have any recommendations?
Make a motion that we approve item 3E except for items 3E2.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of 3E2. And a
Council,
second.
Council Authority Member District 1 Uribe.
Yes.
Council Authority Member District 2 Fossey.
Yes.
Council Authority Member District 3 Campbell.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chair Barbara Martinez.
Yes.
Mayor Chair O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, I'm going to read item 3E2, the Crossroads Landscaping and Lighting District. And is there any public comment? Any comments from the council? Then I will turn it over to the council.
I motion that we accept item 3E2.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded, so let's take a vote.
Council Authority Member District 1 Uribe.
Yes.
Council Authority Member District 2 Fossey.
Yes.
Council Authority Member District 3 Campbell.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. That was quick. Item 6.1, workshop system development fees, waivers, reductions, and deferrals.
Thank you, Mayor. And good evening, Council. So we had a light meeting, obviously, this evening, and so we thought that it would be a opportune time to have a discussion that we've heard from Council a couple times in the past that when workflow allows, it would be good to have a discussion on fee waivers, reductions, because this comes up on a pretty regular basis with regard to specifically our system development fees. So I put together a little presentation here to sort of step through what the fees are for those members of the public that don't know, and what the kind of key policy discussions are. I do kind of want to preface this by saying that it's very possible that we get to the end of this and the council's pleased with the current process we have, or we could make tweaks and changes, and that's sort of what the point of the presentation is. So, system development fees in some communities are called impact fees. In others, public facility fees. There's all manner of names for them, but basically what they are is they're fees that the city is allowed to charge new development, and it's intended to offset the impact that development has to the infrastructure of the city. So in other words, to the best of our ability, try to keep new development paying its own way. Here's the general process for putting them together. You forecast, plan, and prioritize projects. There's a number of different vehicles by which that's done. You then collect funds and design said projects, and then hopefully when you have enough money, you build the project. The purpose, as I mentioned earlier, is just to be sure that new development is paying its own way. It is not the intent of this program or any other, because it's illegal to remedy existing deficiencies in city infrastructure. That's not legal under the Mitigation Fee Act. The section of the Riverbank Municipal Code that governs system development fees and how they are to be considered for waiver or deferral is under section 150.34, and it's intended to address new impacts on city facilities. The city council's aware has the ability to allow for fee credits of certain fee categories to match actual projects related impacts to those facilities. So if it doesn't seem that the project actually lines up with the cost that has been established for that, council can look at that. Those types of reductions, deferrals, waivers all should be supported ideally by written evidence that illustrates the project demands on city infrastructure for a given project. The code actually doesn't require that data be submitted for council consideration. It says that it could include that, but it just says written evidence. So that's a fairly broad term, and as we learned in the St. Francis Catholic Church waiver request, sometimes it doesn't actually accompany actual data or calculations that are something that we can analyze. And there's no requirement actually in the code of an application process or application fee, other than just that they have to submit a request to city staff for review, who in turn review and make a recommendation to council. So it's a very flexible process. There's really not a whole host of requirements, and we'll talk in a second that perhaps there's benefits and drawbacks to that. Common projects funded by our system development fee program: water wells, water storage tanks, regional stormwater improvements, traffic upgrades. Usually those are teamed with a number of other funding sources to do them. New park space, new park equipment, and sewer transmission upgrades. We do not currently have a sewer fee that directly goes towards the plant. It's just not something that Riverbank has ever assessed, though we are looking at it for a future fee update. So here are some of just the general benefits to granting waivers, reductions, and deferrals. You may be able to attract development that might otherwise develop in Riverbank. Incentives for economic development is the most kind of classic approach. Same for affordable housing projects. Marisol and I were actually just talking the other day about a couple of Riverbank projects that most likely wouldn't have gotten off the ground had the council not waived or deferred fees. I'm thinking Claus Apartments is one example. And it's important to keep in mind that we're not talking a couple $1,000s. We're talking, in some cases, over $100,000, depending on the scale of the project. So this is a significant portion of the budget sometimes. It also allows for a more flexible development projects where Riverbank may maintain a competitive advantage over other jurisdictions that have more rigid policies. We see that a lot, that some of the feedback we get from developers is that they like working in Riverbank and other smaller jurisdictions because we're a little bit more flexible than a larger jurisdiction may be. And allows a process where applicants are not charged where they have minimal or no impact to the system. So there are certainly some jurisdictions that take a very sort of black and white approach to this. If you are building a new building or expanding under their definition, you pay the fee, period, whether or not you actually are impacting the system or not. And we'll get to that too. There's some benefits and drawbacks to that. Drawbacks to granting these requests: obviously the number one, most important, less funding for needed capital improvements. Just like most every jurisdiction in California, we are way behind in all of our various capital needs, and this funding is very important in order to continue to create infrastructure that allows Riverbank to grow. There really isn't an alternative source to pick up the funding for waived fees on projects. The only alternative or exception to that statement would be large-scale commercial projects that are going to generate huge amounts of sales tax revenue. You can make the case that, like for example, Crossroads is an example of that. And then the other drawback is you might risk creating inequities between projects because some may succeed in getting their fees waived and others may not. So the idea for tonight's item was primarily to have council just have a discussion on this, and if there is some general direction we can work on, sort of either overhauling our current code or creating some changes to it that might be in line with what the direction council wants to go, or do nothing, which is fine too. So the questions are: what are the desirable types of development that council would, as a policy matter, be willing to consider these requests on? And that doesn't mean approve, just means consider. The two that were most clear to me would be economic development projects. You have commercial projects, which is one that's more of a tax base argument. Then you have industrial projects, which is a job creation argument. Both have their benefits. You have. I also have seen, and I've been part of communities that have attempted to kind of target an area where they haven't been able to attract this type of commercial business for in my experience, it was medical. Some communities just have a very tough time getting doctor's offices and small urgent care facilities, and so sometimes that's one way that they've attracted those kinds of businesses. And then affordable housing, there's obviously private models and public models, and should those be components. And then there's the question that council had to wrestle with a couple of meetings ago with regard to like a nonprofit or religious organization or other type of civic type project. Should those be things that are being considered? Then the other question is, should there be a more formalized process than we have? Meaning, should we actually require an application whereby we can determine what kinds of materials we get back and the council will ultimately review? And then should there be some sort of minor application fee? I mean, these types of requests are intensive. Typically, they're quite a bit of my time, quite a bit of the finance director's time, and then usually planning and engineering and development services all take a look at it. So there is a cost to it regardless of whether or not council chooses to approve it. And then finally, is it better to keep a process as is, less formal, restrictive, which allows the city to be flexible with unique requests in a changing building and development environment? So perhaps as council discusses it, if it's not overly broken, then maybe there's nothing to fix, but it's worth having the discussion. So this is a final slide. This is just so that it can guide some council discussion, and then I think we've felt that way many times on a lot of our different projects. And that's really the totality of my presentation. I will say that I did some research with other local jurisdictions as to whether there's a better model out there or policy documents, and I found nearly nothing locally. We are pretty consistent with most of the other jurisdictions. There's nearly no process in most communities. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I had a question about, as you were doing your research, so were there like common waivers or common reductions that you could find?
Not really. It does appear that most other jurisdictions were struggling with almost the exact same issues that Riverbank does. The frequency is different. Some get more, some get less. But almost all that I spoke to had the exact same kind of experience.
What kind of flexibility do we have in the code?
Well, because there's not a whole lot of detail about what sort of justification is required for council to consider, it really allows almost anybody to request, a deferral or a waiver on any justification. So there's not really a bare minimum of we need at least this, and so that's sort of the major flexibility of the code is if you ask, then council, and you give us the bare minimum, which is a request and some sort of justification, then council's going to hear it.
I like the flexibility we have now with the ordinance where we can talk about each project separately. I think each of them have been unique since I've been on the council, and each had their unique justifications, so I say keep it as it is.
We've got a question. About what would you say the average is yearly that we run into these things?
How many requests?
Yeah, just off the top of your head.
That's a good question. I would say that I at least get someone asking about it, whether or not it gets to you or not, once a month, at least. And then, Donna, would you say that's about accurate or more for you? Okay.
And so when you're talking about taking staff time, approximately how much staff time does it usually take for you guys to, say, analyze one of these things?
So let's take two examples. The Catholic Church, for example, I would say that's I would say that probably somewhere between, if you counted Donna, everybody's time in the 20 to 25 hours range.
Does that include my hours?
With your hours, probably another 5 hours, or at least. So, and it just depends. I mean, some requests come in and they're very clear and they don't really require a whole lot, and others, to get them through the process, you've got to do a lot of correspondence.
Okay, so each one's an individual thing.
Yeah.
And depending on the depth of it, it depends on how much time it'll take.
Yep.
But according to what you're saying, it's quite a bit of time, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I kind of think we ought to look at what is the baseline of things that we have to have. We can't get away with not charging for it, and then evaluate, like Councilmember Fossey said, evaluate each situation, but we have a baseline on where we need to be. I think that would be a good idea, at least consider it.
I'd also like to add to that because we've done it before, and I know cities do, your part about if it's economically volatile for us as a city to do this, because it would bring a large business that was going to benefit us more, that we should be able to keep that particular item in there.
I have difficulties in the waivers for the MS4 requirements. We're not meeting our MS4 requirements, and if we can't meet that, we're going to be hammered pretty hard. So I'd like to keep that at 100%. They may retain their water on site, but that doesn't mean that we're going to be able to go to the older section of town and correct the stormwater issues that we have there. Either that or we put this whole city in a CFD for MS4. And I'd like to have that explored. State of California has said we could, but there hasn't been a test case yet. And do stormwater as sewer. The federal government is making a similar proposal, and I'm going to go back and talk to the U.S. EPA on MS4 at the end of this month, and I'd like to see if we can do a citywide stormwater system. That's going to be expensive, but we have to meet it, or we can be fined $25,000 a day for each contaminant we put in the river. Can you nod yes on that one, Michael? Okay. Any other unfunded mandates that we have to have should be considered. But as we get older in the city, some of our wells are becoming problematic. So the water may not be something we want to consider, even though it's just increasing the size of a warehouse and not increasing the amount of people working in it, like Thunderbolt. So, yeah, it's going to be on case by case, but there's certain things that should not be reduced.
Would it help council or you, Mayor, if we were to, like Vice Mayor Martinez, said, would it help you, it seems to me like one of the problems that we seem to struggle with every time we get these requests is there doesn't seem to be enough clear justification on each of the individual components, right? Water. So, perfect point. How many more connections are there? And if there's another connection, then technically that's a new drain on the water system, whether or not they're adding staff. It is, because we don't know what they will be doing in 10 years or 3 years or even next month. And so that seems to be the issue from my perspective, at least, is that there's not clarity about what sort of data or justification they're required to put. Because at least if you had that, the council would be able to look at it and either agree or disagree. Makes it a little bit more of a judicial proceeding than not.
And I would like to also tie it in with county fee waivers requested and given, because there was a a company that expanded with a large expansion. We gave significant fee reductions. And then when they went to the county, they got a $250,000 fee reduction. And then came back and stuck it to us. So I would like to tie it in with what is the county going to provide before we decide, how much. Now, I am not, I am in favor of, instead of a waiver, a deferment in payment. Whether it's over a 10-year period, depending if it's a nonprofit, to a 3-year after completion or occupancy for a for-profit. But I am at the point now, since we aren't really moving with the stormwater system, we need to start building that.
There's a component that has not been part of practice, but it is technically in the code that would allow the city to, and in fact sort of suggests that the city should assess an interest payment along with any deferment. And so if we think that that's reasonable, I think that should be sort of the basis for the discussion. So maybe instead, when staff gets these requests about, hey, well, can I have my fees waived, the beginning step might be, listen, council's kind of set this policy where for certain items, let's just call it storm for the time being, we would prefer to see a deferment over a certain number of years at whatever nominal interest rate, is set, so that it
Use prime.
prime. Yeah.
I'd like to agree with the mayor on what he said about checking the county fees too before we do anything. But then you're bringing up a good point about the water and the sewage. That's going to be there forever. And really, government and a democracy functions because everybody does their fair part. Every time we excuse somebody, it's coming out of somebody else's pocket. And so I really favor deferment more, because if we waive that, that helps them and they can pay it over years and they're still doing their fair share, but maybe they're not taking out quite the same amount of money that's putting them into the bind at that time.
Have we muddled the water for you?
The city attorney was mentioning to me that both of us really like the idea. If typically for these scale of projects, if you're requesting a fee waiver, you're probably going to request county fee waivers too. It might be a pretty shrewd idea to have, if that's the case, wait for whatever the county determination is on it, because otherwise we're not really helping the project much at all. If
No, you're not helping the infrastructure.
Yeah.
We're putting the impact fees now on others.
Mm-hmm.
The county has a long memory.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to open it up for public discussion. Any public input? Seeing no public input, do you have enough direction?
Yep, we're in the process of working towards updating a couple of our system development fees. So I think we'll do is when we bring that, we'll bring the policy updates as well.
And is that sewer?
Yeah.
For the sewer plant?
It's we're looking at a capacity charge, which is sewer, and traffic primarily, and then probably parks too, because we're doing the parks master plan currently.
So we provided direction. I don't need a vote on direction, do I? Thank you. I knew I didn't. Okay, moving on to item 6.2, time capsule, community center rededication discussion and direction.
Thank you, Mayor. So in August of 1968, at the dedication of the then newly constructed Riverbank Community Center, a time capsule was buried in commemoration of the achievement. 50 years later, in 2018, as most of us here remember, we held a time capsule, or were preparing to hold a time capsule opening event and associated dinner, and got a phone call from Parks about a day or two ahead of time, and it was clear that there was nothing actually in the time capsule. So I know that the chief still has detectives working around the clock on that, but as of now, I believe it still remains unsolved. So
They didn't put anything in. I'm sticking to it.
You know, well, it does appear that way. So, what's that? The question was, why would you put a box in with nothing? And we're all asking ourselves that same
I was
question.
thinking
So.
of it, and they never got around to it.
To avoid that same problem, we now have completed the community center, and we are tentatively exploring the date for August, which is August 17th, which would be exactly 51 years after it was opened, to do a early morning or late morning dedication. And as part of that, we thought that a time capsule would be appropriate. Having done this once before in my career, I learned the hard lesson that you really want the city council to sort of establish what is going to go in and where it's going to be and some of those other details, because absent that, it becomes a little bit of a free-for-all sometimes. So the main direction that we were looking for this evening is time capsule placement. Would we like to do it in the interior wall of the building or in the front of the community center underground? We have talked with Parks, and we'll be able to excavate an area and basically create a little concrete box to place it in, and we'll purchase an actual time capsule that will seal to keep the contents complete. And then obviously there's the question about what should be in the time capsule. What types of things would you like staff to solicit from other agencies or nonprofits? Many communities have the council individually write letters to future city councils or communities, pictures, any number of paraphernalia you could put in there. And then finally, when should the time capsule be open? So the last was 50 years. That's an awful long time. Talking with some folks, we think maybe 25 years would be a sufficient time frame. So folks presumably will still be around to check it out in 25 years. And so anyway, those are just the general thoughts, but if there's anything else council would like to kind of give some direction on, we'll get rolling on that and have one available for when we do the rededication.
I agree with 25 years, and I would like to see some of our pins, maybe, the lapel pin, like what Councilman Uribe has, and probably solicit some of the nonprofits too, just talk about what it is that they've done for the community. And I think maybe something about the current projects that we're working on and what our vision is for the future, like Crossroads West and a couple other projects, and how we have been working to make sure that Riverbank is sustainable for the future. I think that would be good to put in there.
I would agree with Vice Mayor Martinez on what to put in there, but for the nonprofits and the other organizations, I'd like to see them say a little bit about themselves and then give who's their membership at this time, on a page, and we keep all that in one folder, and because that'll fit in there, and you'll get a lot of representation that way from the community, not just the nonprofits, but even other clubs that are maybe not nonprofit. If they're wanting just a list of their things with a little brief paragraph about what they want to do, their little insignia that represents them, etc.
I would like to see photos of the city as it is today. Maybe just the major intersections, but show what it looks like today, and they can see the difference. Also, something showing when we got the industrial complex, the pictures from that.
So I would agree with that. I'd like to see it 25 years also. I do like the idea of the photo of the city, maybe include like the staff, just the big picture overall. The front page newspaper for Riverbank News would be nice, just to see was the highlight of the day. I'd like to see a rock from Jacob Myers Park, because to be honest, we might not have water in 25 years, so I just something. And then what's most likely to be banned in 25 years, just throw something in there that we might not see ever again. Cell phone, plastic straws, whatever.
And
And
also,
something about marijuana,
Make
where
fun.
maybe
Or cannabis.
that we just started it, that, I mean, that was a big deal for us. And I think there should be
80% approval
something.
rating.
And as far as the location, I think probably inside the building would be the safest. inside the building. Not exactly sure where.
Keeping
but-
in mind that that a theft may have occurred before, so we're just sort of it's like parking your car in the same place it got broken into.
Well, I would,
Inside, I think is good.
I would recommend having another list of everything that goes in it, and it's kept separately somewhere else.
Yeah, a duplicate of it. Hey, how's that?
I know, be a file in the city manager's office, and every city manager has to point it out to every next city manager.
All right, let's get a little real on that. I do agree, but we should limit the amount that gets in there to the important things that we think. And if we're going to give them pictures, let's put it on a thumb drive using Microsoft 98.
They don't even know what that is.
No, I'm sorry. No, we should be able to limit and make sure that we have a duplicate of each one. I believe a letter to the future council from each of the members for their eyes only and not for everyone else's. What I like doing at these type of events is having coins for distribution to key guests, and also one for future council members and mayor, 25 years. I can do that research and payment on my own, because I do get paid a heck of a lot more than everyone else.
I think we can afford that.
I
in the
think
budget.
August 17th, if you're going to do early morning, are there going to be any other events out with that?
What we were originally planning was doing a commemoration, sort of a ribbon cutting and some pictures, and then I believe there is an event much later that day. It's a Royal Neighbors event, but we have, I think, until 2 or 3 in the afternoon that day.
All right. Anyone from the public wish to have inputs to this? Seeing none, we have some type of a direction in 5 different ways. So I think what we probably should do, take 1 or 2 council members to come up with some type of a committee and view what's going on in, see if it's appropriate, and put it on in. A subcommittee. One with no agenda.
Yep, that works. One other question, no one addressed: schools. Should we be contacting the schools if?
They're part of the community, and I would like to have Modesto City Schools,
Okay.
Sylvan School District, as well as Riverbank Unified.
Okay.
Also police and fire and all those types of people too.
All right. You got it.
No further comment on that? Okay, we're moving on to staff comment.
We have 2 updates this evening, not from me. Let's start with Kathleen, who's going to give you an update on 8th Street, which is nearing construction phase.
We are really excited. We are in the final stages of our Caltrans paperwork, which is extensive as always, but we are looking at going out to bid in July with construction, or awarding and construction in August. It's a 45-day working day project. We'll be overlaying 8th Street, starting at Patterson all the way to Kentucky. We'll be, let's see here, how many here? We'll be replacing or constructing 10 new ADA ramps, and those will include the truncated domes. And then we have 15 ADA ramps that are already, they're fine, they meet compliance, but we will be adding the truncated domes to those. We'll also be installing a flashing beacon at Arizona. There's a crosswalk there right now. There's no controls, no stops, so there will be a flashing beacon there with the crosswalk. And then, of course, the 4-way crosswalk at California and 8th will have fresh new paint and everything. We know that school will be back in session. We've already met with the principal, and she is on board with making sure, notifying parents and making sure that they are aware that there will be construction. I don't see a lot of, the ADA ramps will go in first, and then that'll be the majority of the project as far as time. And then, of course, the overlay will not take as long once that gets started. So we're real excited about that. So there's just one other thing I wanted to just share is that our pavement restoration project is out to bid, and it's opening on Thursday. So there will be 47 road segments that will be crack sealing, or not crack sealing, slurry sealing, and then 34 road segments that we're crack sealing. So, and those are all Measure L and SB1 funds.
How about Claus Road?
Claus Road, we're working on plans right now, Mayor, and hoping to get that out to bid early fall. And Claus Road is Measure L. So we're excited about Claus Road as well.
And thank you for your efforts on Roselle and Clarabelle.
Oh, you're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. And then Michael is going to give an update. We are nearing smoke testing, and so he has been working. We included a large amount of money in the budget for public outreach on that, and so he is going to be giving us an update on that and the project.
So, evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members. Michael Riddell, Public Works Director. As you know, I have been in front of you a couple of times, once on bringing KSN on board to handle the oversight on this project, and then recently came with my handout for more money. This project is part of our capital improvement, so this is funded through the sewer fund. The national plant who was awarded the bid for this work is gearing up. I should be bringing in front of you next council meeting an informational item that will get you the ability to see the mailer that will be going out, the door hanger that will be going out, and the information that will be going out both in English and Spanish that National Plant will be putting out. I have had them put together a flyer that we will post via Facebook, via the web page, and this kind of thing. So we can do the outreach that we need to make sure everybody understands this. We'll also, National Plant will be coordinating with the fire department and with the police department on probably pretty much a daily basis to let them know where they're working in case something comes up. So I hope that this will run without a hitch. We should be able to get started probably after the 4th, somewhere around July 7th. And that we're hoping to have this completed by end of August. Happy to answer any questions if you have.
Any questions? Thank you, Michael.
And that's all the updates from us. Thank you.
Councilmember Uribe?
Just want to say the concert at the park was a hit. I'm excited and looking forward to it again this Friday. Hope to see all residents out there this Friday at Jack Myers Park. Thursday, June 14th, will be the next Stanislaus Homeless Alliance meeting at the City Council Chambers in Modesto. We'll be electing a temporary chair, releasing a training calendar, reviewing bylaws for our committee, and hear city updates on current homeless projects and efforts. Thank you.
Councilmember Fossey?
As Councilmember Uribe said, Jacob Myers Park this Friday, the 14th. It'll be Valley Fire that's going to be in concert. Park opens at 5, concerts at 7. There's food trucks and some vendors there. I was there last Friday. The snow cones were awesome. And again, I'm so happy Clarabelle and Roselle is open. I drive that every day. Today I came up Clarabelle and got right up to the front to wait for my turn to turn. It's wonderful. Great job by everybody. Thank you, Stanislaus County, for finally doing it.
They didn't. Councilmember Campbell?
I'd just like to remind everybody that PG&E can shut down power now for up to 48 hours. So I would recommend that you talk to your neighbors, you get your neighborhoods together, start talking about this, and see what you can do as a group if this were to happen to you. because it's going to be a real shock if people don't understand what's happening when they don't have their power for 48 hours. If it's really hot, they're not going to have air conditioning, and it may even create a lot of other problems. And I want to see them to be ready for it, and they can get some information from the PG&E website. Additionally, another thing is fireworks is coming up. I've heard some already being going off, and we need your help to make sure that if illegal ones are going on, it's reported to the appropriate authorities so that we can stop it before it gets out of line. And I'm going to be going up to Sacramento on Friday for committee meetings with the Transportation and Communication Committee, and I'll be there all day and bring back some information about what's happening with transportation and communication after that meeting. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
I attended the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution District Special City Selection Meeting to represent our city. And our city manager and we met with representatives from Congressman Harder's office, and we discussed the crosswalk at St. Francis of Rome and also our Riverbank Industrial Complex. And I invite everyone to come out to the Community Center Park and pool meetings and give your input on what you would like to see at the Community Center Park and renovations. Those meetings will take place on June the 12th and July 10th at the community center, and I think July 10th is going to be at the Community Center Park, and then July 23rd they will be coming to our city council meeting to discuss what the community input has been. So come on out and let us know what you'd like to see as far as new equipment, expansion, whatever ideals you might have. And then I also will be going on Friday to the California League of Cities Community Policy Committee meeting. And I think that's it.
Thank you. I'm going to follow up what you said about the illegal fireworks. Chief, they're putting M80s in coconuts and throwing them. They're exploding. I saw about 8 of them along Squire Wells. So as they're going along, those are becoming more like a hand grenade type thing. So,
Passing vehicles, you think?
I just saw the result. You hear the bang, you don't see how it happened, but you see the remnants of the coconuts. And so they're splitting apart pretty good. Part of it is really flying. So that's shrapnel that they're trying to impose. So that's something to be aware of and to protect yourselves from as you're going after those individuals. City Manager, I'd like to have a dry run on the Crossroads West. I'd like to have it next week because I'm not here the following week. Okay. And then also, where do we stand on the electronic sign?
So the business component of it is what we're in review on now, the finer details of how we're paid, when we're paid, some of that. I've asked for I'd like a little bit more, before council gives the final blessing, a little more clear, you're going to jump into, Donna, a little more clear design for council to review on exactly how the sign will look in locations, because those were just very conceptual. They're going to get into actual design as well. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that Sue and I and the sign guys are meeting with the owner of the Del Rio on the 13th to discuss a little portion of his property to be either leased or sold to accommodate a sign. So we got that all set up and going.
This has been an effort for about 18 months.
Not really. The original was, remember that at the council workshops, the actual item was explore the use of possible electronic signs, and then there was an idea about, like, well, do we want to pay for them or do we want to find a way to get them for free? So in earnest, when did you guys get rolling on this? January-ish?
About that, yes.
Shortly after. But we've got approvals now, so
Okay.
we're on it, I promise.
You know, a lot of these things that you've mentioned tonight, Darlene, could be on that electronic sign, and you get a lot of people, thousands of people. And are we exploring Crossroads, putting one out there?
Yes, the code has to be changed or amended for a crossroads sign and for an LRA sign, because that came up at the last meeting as well.
Okay.
And-
Coming inside of Riverbank where that car wash is, that might be the good place to put it instead of the Del Rio.
Well, that's one place that we checked with the sign guys, and then they had two issues with it. The first one is, as the traffic is going eastbound on 108, they're seeing our downtown advertising as they're leaving town. And then coming into town, the westbound people will see a bunch of landscape, and then all of a sudden, boom, the sign is right there, so they barely have time to see it.
It works well in Oakdale. That's okay. All right, thank you, Donna. I'll be attending the U.S. Conference of Mayor, and while I'm there, I'm going to be discussing with the Department of Justice the COPS program and bring it back for discussion and consideration. And they also have a significant amount of homeless information through some of the various departments, HUD, veterans. So I'll also be bringing that back for those on the homeless committee. And they have some good ideas. A lot of mayors have good ideas, which I don't have, on how to deal with absentee landlords or vacant buildings, how to get those up. So I'll be looking at that. That's something that we want to do here, and I think that would be one of the key high points there. Cybersecurity is becoming more and more important, and there's a lot of good ways of resolving your future cyber problems. And a carbon-free problem, a carbon-free society, which eventually we have to get to by 2030, and that's something we should start converting all of our cars to electric when possible and go through the Air Board. They have the money for that. And lastly, there's a good presentation on MS4. And I'm really into the MS4, so I'll be bringing that back for discussion with the city manager and you, Michael. With that, we go to closed session. 8.1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to subdivision Bravo of Government Code 54956.9, 3 potential cases. At this time, the public may comment on item 8.1 with a maximum of 5-minute limit. Is there anyone from the public wishing to discuss? Seeing none, we adjourn to closed session.
I agree with you on that.
Yes.
You know you have two mics on, right? Just turn them on.
I just turned it on.
Yeah, yours is on. Oh, you
I
just turned it on.
turned it on.
I can't hear when there's noise.
The City of Riverbank, City Council and Local Redevelopment Board meetings now in session. Report from closed session, item 9.1. Report on closed session on item 8.1. Conference with legal counsel. Anticipated litigation. 3 potential cases. Direction has been provided to staff. Our next City Council meeting is June 25th at 6 p.m. This meeting is now adjourned.